When I was 9, I learned that monsters don't always hide under your bed. Sometimes they hide in plain sight, watching from the dark corners of your room. The first time I heard the sound of nails dragging across the floor, I thought it was just the house settling. But when I saw my toy chest standing open the next morning, every toy scattered like someone had been searching for something, I knew it wasn't the house. It was him, the shadow that never moved with the others, the one that leaned closer every night. Welcome to the place where nightmares breathe and whispers never fade. If you think you can handle what comes next, don't forget to subscribe before the lights go out. Because this story isn't just about what I saw, it's about what followed me. The man in the closet, the woman at the window, the voice in the rain. They're all waiting, still whispering my name, waiting for me to close my eyes again. And maybe tonight, they'll whisper yours too. I was 9 years old when I realized something in our house was wrong. It was the kind of house that creaked when the wind blew. The kind of place where every sound had an excuse. My mom always said, "It's an old house, sweetheart. Old houses make noises." But those noises weren't the kind you could explain. They weren't pipes or wood or wind. They were alive. They were listening. My room was small, a bed pushed against the wall, a dresser, a toy chest near the window. I used to fall asleep staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling. On the night it began, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside was strong enough to make the trees cast long, dancing shadows across my walls. I watched the branches sway, telling myself that every movement came from them. But one shadow didn't move. It sat still in the corner, near my toy chest, shaped like a crouched figure. I blinked once and it was gone. My body turned cold from the inside out. I remember hiding under the blanket until the air grew too thin to breathe, until I fell asleep. The next morning, the toy chest was open. My mom hated when I left it that way because the toys spilled out onto the floor. I knew I hadn't touched it. Still, I closed it and said nothing. You learn early not to talk about things that don't make sense. But a few weeks later, my little sister, who was only 5, told my mom she didn't like the man in the closet. She said it like she was talking about a real person, as if he were someone she saw every night. Mom laughed, brushed her hair, and said, "You've been watching too many cartoons." But I saw my sister's face. She wasn't joking. Her eyes were wide in a way I'd never seen before. That night, my mom said a quick prayer and tucked her in. She didn't check the closet. Later that night, I woke up to the sound of something dragging across the floorboards, slow and deliberate, like fingernails tracing the grain of the wood. The sound came closer, inching toward my bed. My heart pounded in my ears so loud I thought the noise would wake my mom. Then it stopped right by my bed. I didn't dare look. I just lay there, frozen, clutching the blanket until I passed out. When morning came, I thought maybe I dreamed it, until I saw the marks. Long, jagged scratches carved into the wood beside my bed, fresh enough to splinter at the edges. I ran to show my mom. She said I must have done it while playing, maybe dragging a toy or chair. I swore I hadn't. She didn't believe me. After that, nights became unbearable. The whispers began faint, almost like a radio between stations, coming from my closet. Sometimes I'd wake to find the door slightly open, just enough for darkness to spill out. My sister would cry in her room, pointing at the corner, saying, "He's there." I'd run to her, but there was never anything visible. Still, the air felt heavy, electric, like the moment before a storm. You know that feeling when you're sure someone's watching you, even though you're alone? That was every night. One winter night, it went further. The kind of cold that seeped into your bones settled over the house. I woke to find my door wide open. The hallway light my mom always left on was still glowing. I remember staring at it, trying to decide if I should call out. Then the light went out, not dimmed, not flickered, just gone. I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, and uneven, like someone dragging one foot slightly behind the other. They stopped outside my door. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked up. The door creaked open, just enough for me to see a tall, dark shape lean its head inside. I shut my eyes and pretended to be asleep. I could feel it standing there, the air thick and unmoving. When I finally opened my eyes again, the door was closed. The light in the hall was back on. In the morning, I asked my mom if she had come into my room. She said no. She said she'd been asleep all night. When I told her about the footsteps, she smiled and said, "It was a dream, honey." But my sister was pale that morning. She said she saw the man again, this time by her bed. That's when my mom finally looked worried. She lit a candle and said a prayer in every room. The house felt lighter after that, for a while. The nights grew quiet. The whispers stopped. I thought maybe it was over. Then one afternoon, I came home from school before my mom. I sat on the couch, half doing homework, half listening to the ticking clock on the wall. Then I heard it, the sound of the toy chest slamming shut. The sound came from my room. The house was empty. My mom was still at work. My sister at a friend's. The sound was too loud, too sharp to be the wind. My heart started racing. I told myself I'd imagine it, but I couldn't help it. I walked down the hallway. My bedroom door was wide open. The chest was closed tight, but all my toys were scattered across the floor as if someone had dug through them in a hurry. I didn't step inside. I backed away, grabbed my backpack, and waited on the porch until my mom came home. She didn't believe me when I told her, of course. She said maybe the cat knocked things over, but the cat was outside all day. She didn't look at me when she said it. Her hands were shaking slightly. Years later, long after we'd moved away, I asked her again. I was older then, and I wanted the truth. She hesitated. Then she said, "Sometimes I'd wake up and see a shadow standing in my doorway. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you." She said she thought it was a man, maybe someone who used to live there. She said it always stood still, watching. I wanted to believe she was wrong. I wanted to believe that what I saw, what I heard, what my sister cried about, was all a child's fear. But even now, when I can't sleep, sometimes I hear it again, that dragging sound across the floor. Slow, patient, like it's been waiting all these years for me to close my eyes. When I was 10, we moved into a bigger house because my mom got remarried. It was newer, brighter, the kind of house you'd never expect to hold anything dark. My new room had 2 big windows that faced the backyard and a closet so deep it could almost be its own room. I thought that was cool at first. A place to hide during games, a secret space just for me. But by the first night, I wished that closet didn't exist. It started small, a soft shuffling sound, like clothes brushing together. It came from inside the closet around midnight. I sat up, staring into the darkness, telling myself it was nothing. That old habit of rationalizing every sound coming back to me. I shut my eyes, but then I heard the door tremble, not open. Just a faint vibration like someone pressing a hand against it from the inside. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I pulled the blanket over my head and didn't move until daylight crept across the wall. The next morning, the closet door was cracked open. Just a sliver, but enough to see the dark line of shadow inside. I knew I'd shut it. I always did. My mom said maybe the air vent made it move. She said I was too old to be scared of my own room, so I stopped mentioning it. But that didn't make it stop. A few nights later, there came a faint tapping at my window. Soft at first, then more deliberate. The glass rattled just slightly each time. I thought maybe it was branches, but when I looked, there were none near the window. The tapping went on for what felt like hours. When I finally hid under my blanket, it stopped. Then, silence so deep it made my ears ring. I tried to forget about it until one night curiosity won. The tapping came again, steady, measured. I slowly pulled the blanket down and looked. There was a pale hand pressed flat against the glass. It wasn't my reflection. The fingers were too long, the nails too sharp. The window was on the 2nd floor. There was no way anyone could be standing there. The hand didn't move. It just stayed. The skin stretched white until it slid down and vanished below the frame. I couldn't scream. I just sat there frozen until morning. When I told my mom, she laughed. My stepdad laughed too. They told me I was dreaming, half asleep, imagining things. But that night, I noticed they left the hallway light on. It made me think maybe they didn't feel so safe either. About a month later, my little brother, only 4 years old, started talking about the white lady. He said she came into his room and sat on his bed. My mom said kids have wild imaginations. Then one night he screamed. I ran into his room and he was curled up, sobbing under his blanket. He said the white lady had been standing by the door, staring at him. He said her eyes were black. I believed him. After that, sleep was impossible. I began having dreams where the white lady whispered my name from the corner of my room. Her voice was dry and papery, like dead leaves brushing together. I'd wake up and sometimes still hear her, faint but real. One night, I woke to find her standing at the foot of my bed. Her head nearly touched the ceiling. Her hair hung in wet strands across her face, and her dress looked like it was floating in water. Her skin was so pale it almost glowed, and those eyes empty, endless black. I wanted to scream, but the sound never came out. I shut my eyes tight. When I opened them again, she was gone. The closet door, however, was wide open. From that night on, I couldn't go near that closet. I begged my mom to let me sleep in her room. She said I needed to be brave. I think she didn't want to admit she was scared too. So I stayed, every night lying perfectly still, waiting for something to happen. For a few weeks it didn't. Then came the storm. It was one of those nights where the wind howled through the trees and rain hammered the windows like gravel. I woke to the sound of my window creaking. Slowly, it slid upward, even though I knew it was locked. I watched the latch twist by itself, turning until it clicked open. My whole body froze as the window opened completely. Cold rain sprayed across my blanket. Then I saw her. The white lady climbed through. Her movement slow, unnatural. She didn't step, she floated, gliding across the room until she hovered beside my bed. Her face came closer, and I could feel her cold breath on my skin. She whispered my name again. It was so quiet, but it felt like the sound echoed inside my skull. That's when I screamed. My mom and stepdad ran in, switching on the light, shouting. But the window was shut and locked, the curtains dry. Nothing was out of place. They told me I was dreaming again, that it was just a nightmare. I wanted to believe them, but the air still smelled of rain. They started sending me to therapy after that. The doctor said it was stress, adjustment issues. I nodded and pretended to agree, but the dreams didn't stop. Some nights, I'd wake up and feel the bed dip slightly, as if someone had just sat down at the edge. Sometimes I'd hear my little brother in his room crying softly, whispering, "Go away, please go away." My mom said it was nightmares, but I knew better. I heard her too. I heard her whispering my name. Years later, I still don't sleep well during storms. I avoid looking at windows at night. When I see fog on the glass, I check for handprints, even though I know I won't find any. I tell myself it was just my imagination, a child's fear. But sometimes, when the wind gets just right and the house creaks, I swear I hear it again, that faint tapping at the window. Patient, almost polite, like she's waiting for me to look. When I was 8, the world still felt small enough to understand. My days were filled with bike rides, scraped knees, and the hum of cicadas in the summer heat. Our street was quiet, lined with small houses and old trees whose roots lifted the sidewalks. I learned every bump and crack on that road. I thought I knew everything about it until I met the man at the driveway. He was always there in the afternoons, standing at the edge where the concrete met the sidewalk. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow, but he always smiled when he saw me. "Hey there, kid," he'd say, his voice rough like gravel, but kind. "How's school?" I'd call back from across the street, never stopping my bike completely because my mom had warned me never to cross the road alone. He never stepped off the driveway, never came closer. He just waved, and I waved back. It became our ritual. After a while, he started knowing things he shouldn't have. He'd ask how my little brother was feeling, or say he liked the new bell on my bike before I even rang it. I told myself he must have seen us from afar, that he was just a neighbor who paid attention. But even then, something about him didn't sit right. There was a stillness to him, like he was standing in a photograph instead of the real world. One afternoon, he asked if I wanted to race him to the corner. I laughed and said my mom would be mad if I left the sidewalk. "One day," he said, smiling wider. "We'll race one day." Then he chuckled softly, like it was a private joke. His laughter stayed in my head for hours after I rode away. Then, one week, he stopped showing up. I passed the house every day, looking for the familiar figure in the hat, but the driveway was empty. The front window curtains were drawn tight. The house looked different without him there, hollow, like it was holding its breath. A few days later, I saw a woman in the backyard watering flowers. I'd never seen her before. I wanted to ask where the man had gone, but Mom's rule kept me from crossing the street. Still, curiosity has a way of growing teeth. One afternoon, when my mom wasn't looking, I rode to the corner, checked both ways, and crossed the street. My heart pounded so hard it made my hands shake on the handlebars. I stopped near the gate at the end of the driveway. The woman turned and saw me. She wasn't angry, just surprised. "Can I help you?" she asked. I told her I used to talk to the man who stood in the driveway. I said he'd always waved and told jokes. Her face changed. She set down her watering can, wiped her hands on her dress, and asked me what he looked like. I told her about his hat, his smile, how he always wore the same dark jacket. She nodded slowly. Then she said, "That sounds like my husband, Harold." I grinned, relieved, but then she added softly, "Harold passed away last year." The air left my chest like I'd been punched. "No," I said. "He's out here all the time. I saw him just last week." She shook her head. "You must be mistaken. Harold's gone." She went inside for a moment and came back with a framed photo. "This was him," she said. I looked at the picture. It was him. The same smile, the same hat. But there was something elsey, long, pale scar running from his ear to the corner of his mouth. I didn't remember a scar. I told her I never saw a scar. She frowned. "He's had that since he was young. You couldn't miss it." But I had. The man I talked to didn't have one. His skin had been smooth. Too smooth. I thanked her and backed away, pedaling home with my stomach twisted in knots. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw his face again smiling, unblinking, without that scar. The next night, the rain came. Light at first, then heavy, tapping against the windows like small fingers. I woke up because someone was calling my name. It was faint but familiar, coming from outside my window. The voice sounded exactly like his. "Hey there, kid," it whispered. "Come race me." My throat closed up. I froze, every part of me screaming to call for my mom. I could hear the rain hitting the glass, could see the faint outline of the hat beyond the curtain. The voice came again, closer this time. "You said one day. It's one day now." I screamed. My mom rushed in, my dad right behind her. I told them someone was outside. They looked out the window, shined a flashlight, saw nothing. The yard was empty. The rain fell in sheets, making the world outside shimmer and blur. My mom told me it was just a dream, but I knew better. I could still smell the wet earth from where the window had been cracked open. After that, I avoided the house. Even when I biked different routes, I could feel when I got near it the air would grow still, the sound of my tires quieter. One time, I thought I saw a figure standing behind the drawn curtains. Just a shape, but it was enough. I pedaled faster and didn't look back. Years passed. We moved away. The memory faded, or at least I told myself it did. Then one day, long after I'd grown up, I drove down that same street. The houses looked smaller. New cars, new paint, new faces. The driveway was empty. For a moment, I thought about stopping, just to see. Maybe even to ask if anyone had ever seen a man standing out there. But then I noticed a kid, maybe 8 years old, riding a red bike near the corner, the same age I had been. The same kind of bike. He slowed down and looked toward the driveway, like he was expecting to see someone there. For a split second, I almost saw him to a tall man in a hat, smiling that same still smile. But when I blinked, he was gone. The kid waved anyway, as if someone had waved first. I didn't stop. I kept driving, the road stretching out in front of me like a long gray scar. I don't know if I'll ever go back there again. But sometimes, when it rains, and I hear a faint tapping on the glass, I swear I can still hear that voice calling softly from somewhere outside, patient as ever. One day, there are nights when I lie awake and think about all the houses I've lived in. The old one with the man in the closet, the newer one with the white lady at the window, the quiet street with the man in the driveway. 3 different places, 3 different faces, but the same feeling behind every story. That silent pull in the dark, that awareness that something is watching. I used to think it was coincidence. Now I'm not so sure. When I got older, I started to notice patterns. The cold that came from inside, not from the air. The sound of nails or tapping, always rhythmic, always patient. The voices that called my name even when no one else was home. They changed tone and shape, but they never went away. I tried to reason it out like an adult should: psychology, sleep paralysis, stress. But explanations don't stop shadows. They just make them quieter, more patient, waiting for you to believe in them again. It's strange how fear can follow you. You can move cities, grow up, change jobs, get married. But then one night, when everything's still and the house settles, you hear something familiar. A faint dragging on the floorboards, a tap on the window, a whisper from the closet that hasn't been opened in months. That's when you realize it isn't the house that's haunted, it's you. A few years ago, I moved into a new apartment. It was modern, clean, safe. I told myself this was a new start, that the things I saw as a kid would finally fade away. For the first few months, it was perfect. No strange noises, no cold spots, no shadows that didn't belong. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. It wasn't clear, just the cadence of words, like someone speaking through water. I got up, turned on every light, checked every room, nothing. But when I came back to my bedroom, the closet door was open. Just a crack. I stood there for a long time, staring into that narrow strip of darkness. The air coming out was cold. Too cold. My heart started pounding the way it did when I was 9. I shut the door and told myself I was overreacting. The next morning, it was open again. After that, small things started happening. My keys moved from the table to the counter. The bathroom mirror fogged up with handprints when I hadn't showered. And sometimes, when the apartment was completely silent, I could hear 3 sounds at once: a faint scrape, a light tap, and a slow whisper, separate but layered, like a chorus just beneath hearing range. I knew those sounds. They'd followed me my whole life. One night, I recorded the noise on my phone. When I played it back, I heard it clearer than ever. The whisper was saying my name. I deleted the recording immediately, but deleting the file didn't stop the sound. If anything, it made it worse. That same night, I dreamed of the 3 of them. The man in the closet, the woman in white, and the man with the hat. They stood in a dark room with no walls, no ceiling, just endless shadow. I couldn't see their faces, only the outlines. They didn't move. but I could feel their eyes on me. The white lady's hand brushed against the man in the hat, and the sound it made was like fingernails on wood. The man in the closet stepped forward, his voice a low murmur. "You left the door open," he said. Then I woke up. Every instinct told me to leave, to move again. But I didn't. I was tired of running. I wanted to understand why they followed me, so I started digging. I found out that every house I'd lived in had a death connected to it. A man who hung himself in the basement. A woman found drowned in a bathtub. A car crash that killed a father at the end of the street. None of it was public knowledge, but I found the records. I don't know what I was hoping for, maybe that it would make sense somehow. It didn't. It only made things worse. After reading those files, I began to hear them clearer than ever. I'd catch my reflection in a window and see movement behind me. I'd turn, and nothing would be there. My phone would buzz in the middle of the night, but when I checked it, there'd be no call. Only a faint static sound that lingered for seconds before cutting off. One night, the whisper came right to my ear. "Do you believe us now?" it asked. The voice wasn't angry or vengeful, it was almost sad, like it had waited too long to be heard. Then came the night I realized they weren't separate at all. I woke to the sound of nails dragging across the floor, the window tapping, and my closet door creaking all at once. My room was dark, but I could make out shapes. The tall figure of a woman near the window, her hair hanging over her face. A shadow crouched low near the closet, and behind them, at the door, a tall man wearing a hat. They didn't move toward me. They just stood there. And I understood. They weren't haunting me because they wanted to hurt me. They were showing me something. Pieces of one thing, one presence that had worn different faces. The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. The woman raised her head, and though I couldn't see her eyes, I felt her stare. The man with the hat lifted his hand, and I could see the faint shimmer of a scar cutting across his cheek. The man by the closet whispered, "It's time." The words echoed through the room like wind through an empty hallway. Then everything went still. I woke up sitting in bed, drenched in sweat, my throat raw from screaming. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The closet door was shut. The window was closed. But on the floor by my bed were 3 parallel scratches carved deep into the wood. I moved out the next morning. Now, years later, I live in a place with no closets, no big windows, no nearby streets. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I think I hear them again, 3 faint sounds weaving together in the dark. The scrape, the tap, the whisper. Maybe they're still waiting, or maybe they never left. Either way, I've stopped pretending they weren't real. Some things follow you because they want to be remembered. Others follow because they know you already do. Some people say ghosts are tied to places. They believe spirits linger where they died, repeating their last moments over and over. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think some ghosts attach themselves to people, to the ones who see them, who hear them, who believe them. I think that's what happened to me. Every home I lived in was different, but the feeling was always the same. The scratching, the whispers, the shape in the corner of my eye. They weren't bound by walls or distance. They followed me because I never stopped remembering them. I used to think fear would fade with age. That reason could drown out what I saw as a child. But logic doesn't erase memory. It just buries it until something wakes it up again. The sound of nails on wood, the flicker of light beneath a door, the rain hitting glass like fingertips, that's all it takes. Suddenly you're a child again, frozen in bed, knowing that something in the dark knows your name. If you've ever felt that way, that heavy awareness in the dark, that certainty, you're not alone. I need you to listen carefully. Don't talk to it. Don't look for it. Fear is the only language they understand. And when you answer, you tell them where to find you. Keep your eyes closed. Let the sound pass. Because once you acknowledge them, they never stop listening. Sometimes, I wonder if I could have done something differently. If I hadn't stared at the shadows. If I'd ignored the hand at the window. If I'd never crossed the street to that driveway. Maybe then they would have left me alone, but then I think about what my mom said, that faith and light can drive darkness away. Maybe she was right. Maybe the reason they still linger isn't because I saw them. Maybe it's because I never forgave them for making me afraid. Fear feeds them. Belief sustains them. But courage, real courage, is the one thing they can't mimic. When you turn on the light, they vanish. When you breathe and stay still, they lose their grip. You can't fight what you don't understand, but you can refuse to invite it closer. So if you ever hear nails dragging across your floor or a soft tapping at your window, don't panic. Don't answer. Take a breath. Turn on the light. And remind yourself that not everything in the dark deserves your attention. Some things are meant to be forgotten. And if you made it this far, maybe the darkness has already started listening. So stay with me, keep the lights on, and don't forget to subscribe. Because the moment you stop watching is the moment they realize you're alone.